What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with my MLB Week 9 power rankings. Before I get into it, we got to talk about the biggest movers. The Cardinals going undefeated last week make a huge jump up as they're moving up 10 spots, as the Rays really struggle and they're falling way behind in not just the power rankings, but the standings as well. 30 through 26, I think this is what you would have expected at this point in the season through about 50, 60 games here. The White Sox, Rockies, A's, Angels, and Marlins round out the bottom five. The only team that I think is showing some little promise is the Marlins. They come off a good week last week as they look to continue it against the Padres and the Rangers, who are playing just decent baseball right now. So if you're looking for possibly an upset in a series win, I'd lean towards the Marlins over any of these teams this week. 25 through 21. It's disappointing to see the Blue Jays and the Mets here at this point in the season. I think the Blue Jays had a good thing going. They won on Thursday against Detroit and then just couldn't figure it out those last three games where that's why they are falling down here. Could have easily been over, I think, 500. If that's the case, I think they could have been 27 and 26 at this point if they would have went in there and swept Detroit. It was theirs for the taking, but they just couldn't do it. Now the Reds had a good week. From some standpoint, they went 4-2, so moving up one. But sweeping the Dodgers at home is no joke. But the Padres series was questionable, 1-2, and they look to rebound this week with some divisional opponents. It's a big week for them if they really want to get back into the NL Central race. And the Nationals, same thing for them. They got to go in and beat Atlanta if they want to somehow claw their way back into the NL East. They're going to have to do that along with the Mets. The Mets have seven tough home games at home, or seven home games. Tough opponents come in, the Dodgers and Diamondbacks. Then you have the Pirates, which I don't think are getting talked about enough. This team's gonna be floating around 500 all year in the NL Central, and two at Detroit, two in Toronto, or three in Toronto. Big week for them as well as they look to, possibly get to 500 this week on the road. 20 through 16, here you find the biggest drop of the week in the Tampa Bay Rays at 20. 1-5 last week, 0-3 against Boston at home, and then they went 1-2 against the Royals and really had some chances to win all of these games last week, but it just didn't work for them. They get Oakland this week to start their week, so it should be a little easier for them to get back on track. But, this Rays team is slowly fading. Same with the Rangers, they're struggling as well. They get Arizona and Miami, so it could be a good week to pick them up. The Astros sitting right there around 500 as well. Do as good as I thought they would have done last week, just looking at that schedule. Thought they at least got one more win, whether it was against Oakland or the Angels. And they have Seattle and Minnesota, which is two tough opponents right now at this point. Diamondbacks, 6 road games this week. They need to get to 500, and same for those Giants who are at 500. Tough homestand for them as they get Philly and the Yankees coming to town. Two, you'll see later, top 10 teams here in my power rankings and also probably top 5 teams in baseball at this point. 15 through 11. You got my Tigers here sitting at 15. I thought it was going to be an awful week after starting the week 0-4, but then clawing back and getting those 3 wins at home against Toronto really put the Tigers back into a place where I think they can be happy with where they are at. 6 games this week against teams that I think they can beat. Pittsburgh, I think they got to at least split every series for it to be a successful week here for the Tigers, as this team is probably going to be a 500, maybe a little better ball club when it's all said and done. Same for those Red Sox. They're floating around that 500 mark all season long, but they have a tougher opponent, and going into Baltimore this week, that's going to be tough for them. Cardinals, there's their big jump here. They went 5-0 against some good opponents in the Orioles and the Cubs. Didn't put them again above the Cubs just because the Cardinals are still under 500, where the Cubs are above 500. But the Cardinals need to get some respect here. They're starting to slowly figure some things out. And if this pitching can get going, the Cardinals could be a team that could slowly put themselves in a position to buy at the deadline if they choose to do so. Same with those Cubs. They're falling back here. It seems like they have really good weeks and really bad weeks and no just mediocre weeks. As I'm keeping them at 12. They had only 5 games to prove themselves. Went 1-4. That 2 games against St. Louis on the road didn't look too well. But now they go to Milwaukee and Cincinnati. It's a big week for the NL Central. Lots of games being played against each other. Then the Padres are moving up to 8 games in 7 days is no joke. They get 3 against Miami and 3 in Kansas City. So an easier start to the week, maybe cool off a little bit here for the Padres as they look to keep it, around 500 for the rest of the year, because we've seen this team slowly fizzle out when it gets to August or September. So maybe this Padres team needs to pick it up a little bit. 10 through 6, I don't think it's too much of a shock here to see the Braves outside of the top 5 here after what happened last week with Acuna's injury. Now he's done. I just think this is a whole new team and, deserving so. They got to drop out of the top 5, in my opinion. But then you have the Royals and the Twins from the AL Central. Royals just keep on rolling. Same with those Twins. A good pick-me-up week after last week's bad week. But these two teams play each other 4 games, Minnesota and the Royals. And it's a big week for both of those teams as, if they split, I think that's pretty good. But what team will have the upper hand going into the next series after this week is the big question. Then you have the Brewers and the Mariners. Both of those teams, I don't think are getting talked about enough, at least on the national level, especially the Mariners because they play 3 hours behind the East Coast, and most of the people that watch baseball are going to bed when they are starting their games. So the Mariners need to get some more respect as they are leading the AL West at this point in this season. Then 5 through 1, I'm finally putting the Guardians in my top 5. And that's because, well, they're just on fire. If they beat Colorado today, they would be on a 10-game winning streak. And, you can't deny that this team is a top 5 team right now at this point in the season. I don't think anyone saw that coming. Even the Royals, even the Twins. I think that's where we saw kind of this division being a little over 500. But what the Guardians are doing at this point in the season is just bonkers. But if you look at their schedule, it has been a little on the easier side. And go look at their August and September schedule. It's a doozy for all the teams that they have to play. So maybe the Guardians are just getting a little ahead of themselves, or this team is going to be legit. But we got to figure that out here in the next few months. Dodgers fall back after going 1-5 last week to some teams they should have beat. And, same thing this week. They got to beat those teams. So they should beat those teams. Orioles had a very interesting week. 0-3 against St. Louis, and then you go on the road again to face the White Sox and sweep them 4-0. So I moved them up 1 just because they had a positive week technically, but 6 home games against the AL East. Big week for those Orioles to really grow their lead in second place at least. And then the Yankees, obviously in first place now by a game and a half over those Orioles. And the Yankees started their road trip last weekend and finish it up this week in California, 3 against the Angels and 3 against the Giants. This Yankees team really is starting to figure it out hitting wise. Soto and Judge, especially these 2 guys back to back, are becoming a threat like we thought they would. Took them a little while, but they are now starting to figure that out. Then, of course, I have the Phillies at 1. Even after losing a series in Colorado, I think the Phillies are still the best team in baseball, and they're going to prove it this week in San Francisco and against St. Louis. I wouldn't be shocked if they go 5-1 this week and really keep their foot on the gas as being the best team in baseball. But that's going to be it for my Week 9 power rankings. Check back next week to see where your favorite team is. Until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.